Peter Galbraith, last week, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the U.S. said, if you're going to defeat ISIS, you're going to need to go into Syria. What do you make of this statement by the Syrian government, and what do you think the strategy is?
Well, I would put it a little differently, which is to say, if you're going to defeat ISIS, you're going to need boots on the ground. You're going to need troops. Air power can be effective, but only when there are ground forces that can take advantage of it. And so the question then is, where are those ground forces? And the answer is, well, there's the Syrian army. There is the Iranian army. There isn't much of an Iraqi army. And the fourth force, the Peshmerga military of Kurdistan, are in a defensive mode. They are not going to be advancing. So whether you coordinate or not with Damascus, whether you have permission from Damascus for airstrikes, the reality is by striking at the same enemy, you will be enabling Syrian ground troops to take advantage of the American airstrikes.
So what should the West be doing?
Well, I think the West has to make a judgment about what is the greater threat. In the 1940s, 41, almost everybody agreed that Stalin was a horrendous dictator, but he was not attacking other countries. And so when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, Britain and France allied itself with the Soviet Union, not with any illusion about what it was really about. And somewhat a similar situation here. It doesn't mean one should ally with Damascus, but at least that offers the one prospect of defeating ISIS. And the other point is, the strategy of supporting the Syrian opposition has not worked. It really never had a chance of working, even if lots of weapons had been poured in there, because for the regime, given its composition, that's an Alawite regime, losing meant not just some people losing power, but a whole community, 11% of the population being wiped out, Christians imperiled. So they had sufficient force to stay in power. And the result of the support to the opposition has been that a lot more people have been killed, and it's provided a breeding ground for extremists. So perhaps this is an opportunity also to look for a political settlement in Syria, which would give greater rights to the Sunnis and to those who have been in the opposition, as well as to the Kurds, and yet still protect the rights of the Christians and Alawites. It's not going to be a great solution. It's not going to be a democracy, but it could be an improvement over what's going on right now.
And the Syrian opposition has consistently claimed that the government in Damascus let these same jihadists out of jail when the peaceful uprising began 3 years ago.
It certainly has served the purposes of the government in Damascus to have the opposition transformed or dominated by people who are abhorrent to the entire world. And there were clearly times when they preferred to fight the more moderate groups and let ISIS fight those groups on the other side. But so there's no defense of the Syrian government here, which is engaged in appalling human rights abuses. But it is a point that now ISIS is powerful, and if you want to defeat it, you need ground troops, and the only place you're going to find the ground troops is from the Syrian military and probably the Iranians.
So say you, Peter Galbraith, but each day there's new voices calling on Obama to step up intervention in Iraq. General Jack Keane co-signing a piece in the Wall Street Journal this Monday calling for a U.S.-led coalition.
Well, there's no support in the United States for sending in American troops to Iraq or Syria, and that is the alternative. There are no countries that are signing up to join a coalition. There weren't in 2000, well, only Britain in 2003. So, I mean, you can call for these things, but that's not going to make them happen. I mean, this is sort of a kind of theoretical point that the general is making. The reality is that the only troops that are available who can take advantage of the American airstrikes are going to be the Syrians and perhaps the Iranians, because the Iraqis, they don't exist.
You're just back from Iraqi Kurdistan. What was the message there?
The message there was help us. We have created the one stable democratic part of Iraq. We are the place that is the safe haven for the Christians, for the Yazidis. It's because we are a tolerant place, actually also for the Sunnis and the Shiites. And instead of going through a government in Baghdad that would prefer to see us destroyed, than for us to continue with the autonomy that we now have, you ought to be helping us directly. I mean, the amazing thing is, after Mosul fell in June, the government of Prime Minister Maliki barred cargo flights into the Kurdistan region because they might be carrying in arms that would have defended Kurdistan again. And now 1.5 million refugees from other parts of Iraq against ISIS, the same mortal enemy of the Shiites. That is the mentality. So they're saying, that these old arrangements don't work. We need the help directly.
And the mentality in Erbil is that this is all pointing towards independence for Iraqi Kurdistan. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, of course. The Kurds never wanted to be part of Iraq. For them, it's a country that in the 80s led to genocide all through its history, brutal repression. It's the unanimous desire of the population to be independent. And I've been in countries, and I was first ambassador to Croatia. I saw the breakup of Yugoslavia, saw what happened in East Timor when that became independent. The reality is you cannot keep people in a country that they unanimously don't want to be part of. And so the sooner that we recognize the reality, accept that Kurdistan is going to have a referendum on independence, it will vote for independence, and accept that reality. Incidentally, it's also the right result. I mean, if you have people who have really created something decent, don't want to be linked to a failed state, why shouldn't we be recognizing them?
All right, Peter Galbraith, with an endorsement there. We'll have to see how it plays out. I want to thank you for joining us today from Montpelier, Vermont. I want to thank our International Affairs editor, Douglas Herbert. Stay with us. Much more to come here on France 24.